And we want to welcome all of you to the Firebrand Pastor, the podcast where passion meets purpose in lively discussions about pivotal Christian topics. And I'm your host, Pastor Bill Brown. And with me, as always, is Pastor Benjamin Good. How are you doing today, Ben?
Doing all right, man. It's good for a good Western New York day. And, the sun was shining a little bit, mostly cloudy. But, things are going good. How about you, Bill? How you doing?
Doing good. Beautiful day here in California. And we have with us a very special guest, Val Holz, a longtime friend of mine. And also, I guess you could say we were neighbors too. So actually, kind of sort of neighbors twice. I mean, we were up and downstairs neighbors at one time. And then after we all moved out of that building, you were just down the street. Not too far from me and my wife. So we've been around each other quite a bit. So, and of course, both served at South Ridge in various capacities. And so, Val, how you doing today?
Go to we live out Ohio, small neighbors. Yeah, we lived in the same building in the WGOJ building where they had the original broadcasting until they sold that building.
Yeah, absolutely. And then ended up in the same neighborhood. But yeah, well, terrific. So Val, normally I prepare people beforehand. And of course, you and I have talked about some of the subject and some of the things that we're talking about today. But I'm going to spring something on you because today we have, an interesting topic, a different topic than we normally have. It's a topic regarding finances, but not just finances in general, as we've talked about, but how to prepare for the end, how to prepare for our families to have what they need after we're gone. And your specific specialty is estate planning. And let me just introduce that topic with a scripture verse here from Proverbs 13:22. And it says this: a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. And it just emphasizes the importance of preparing even beyond, for us anyway, even beyond the grave, because we have people that we need to take care of. And your specific niche is, of course, estate planning. But let's open it up just a little bit wider here, because I think this is an important topic. I think probably if we were to pick our brains, all three of us were to pick our brains, we probably know somebody who has that attitude of, well, God will take care of me. I have faith, and so God will take care of me. I had a friend who was that way, and he didn't take care of estate planning. He didn't have any kind of a will, any kind of living trust, anything like that. And what ended up happening was he became very ill and passed on. And his wife had no one. She had to live off the charity of others, which was fine. That worked fine. But it put a lot of stress on the ministry that was taking care of her, when all of that could have easily been avoided just simply by planning ahead. And I wanted to ask you, do you believe that kind of planning, obviously we know the answer because of what you do, but do you believe that planning ahead in this case is important? Does that show a lack of faith, or can we still practice our faith as Christians just simply by, I think we may have lost Val. Did we lose Val?
Yep.
Uh-oh, we lost him. Oh, see, my question was too long. That's okay. He'll be back here in a second. So we'll just give him some time, but it'll give him time to think. Which he doesn't. He's a highly intelligent guy. I'll tell you what. I joke about my friends and how intelligent they are, but I have very intelligent friends. So You just, I have been blessed throughout my time here. So, Val, you're back. Okay, good. So let me just synopsize all of that. So is planning ahead. So say estate planning or something, even a will or a living trust, those types of things do those show a lack of faith, or can we practice our faith alongside of those and still plan for all of that?
Well, I believe, Bill, the obvious would be for me to say you should plan, because I'm an estate planning attorney, yeah. And the Lord is given as a delight to do.
I think we may have lost you again. I don't know. Okay.
Sounds like an internet problem right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Got some internet problems here.
Yeah,
there we
possibly.
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry, Bill. Well, everything's to be done decently in order and is ahead of a household. That person and the couple, if they're married, should definitely plan everything in their household, their finances, the transition from being on earth and going home to be with the Lord. So, of course, as an estate planning attorney, I'm going to take the position that everyone should plan. The basics of a last will and testament is where you actually leave instructions for those that come after you. Number one, who's to be in charge? Your fiduciary. In most states, that's the executor or personal representative. And that will takes effect upon your death, whereas a situation where you might become incapacitated.
Yes.
That is a document that you utilize called a power of attorney, where someone else can sign your name if you're unable to sign your name. These are the two basic documents that I would say everyone should have. Now, it's worked out in the past sometimes where people don't have a will, don't have a power of attorney, and they were able to navigate, their family was able to navigate without that. But I think that's the exception rather than the rule.
Yes.
Government was instituted to protect life, and that's one of the three institutions, I believe. You've got the church, the family, and government. Instituted by God. So again, the government has set out parameters for the orderly distribution of an estate when someone passes away, and at a minimum we should follow those rules. And those rules basically say leave a document that will allow you to indicate who you want to be in charge of your estate, the manager, the fiduciary, and who's to get everything. The beneficiaries of your estate. And you can even say how they're to get it. If you've got children or spouse, usually everything goes to your spouse. And then when both spouses are gone, everything goes to the children equally. That doesn't necessarily mean that's how you have to do it. There's ways of protecting your children by not giving it to them immediately. Or if there's a child that's receiving because they have some kind of a stipend from the government that they would lose if they received an inheritance. There's ways of making a child get equal inheritance and that they do not lose benefits. So I think that the verse that you quoted, Bill, in Proverbs 13 there, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Mm-hmm. Just today I was discussing with a new client, they wanted their 4 children to receive the indicated. Well, if one of those children passed away, would you want that 1/4 share to go to that deceased child's children, your grandchildren? And she said, yes, I think so. I never thought of that. So again, we lead them to make some decisions. They're the boss. We don't make those decisions for them. But we lead them in that discussion, and it's a very satisfying thing when you're able to help people plan their estate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, I loved what you said at the beginning. And when we talked about this the other day, you mentioned do everything decently and in order, which was a reference in Paul's day to the church, but that's God in every situation. That's God in family. That's God in, you look at the way the world works. Yeah, it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. We know that. And sometimes our government doesn't always work the way it's supposed to work. But at the same time, there's a reason why there's order in the universe and even order amongst humanity, because God is a God of order, and you need to do everything decently in order. And until you had said that, I hadn't really connected that verse with this subject, but that's certainly true when it comes to faith, and especially those of us who are in ministry, we're trying to set an example. And not just setting an example, but we're trying to guide people into obviously glorifying God through righteous living and loving God more. And it's so much simpler to love God more when we have our finances in order and we're able to look over these things and say, hey, this is done. So for me personally, I believe that we should have this end of life viewpoint. We don't do that enough in the United States. We need to have that end of life viewpoint where we do look ahead far enough to see that when our people need us the most is when we're actually not there to be able to provide. How important this is. Now, you're an estate planner, so you're going to push that aspect of it, and that's okay. You can do that in just a minute, okay? But let me just ask, in general, what are some ways, because you were explaining this to me the other day, but what are some ways that people can plan to take care of their people after they're gone? Obviously, estate planning is one very comprehensive way of doing it. But are there other ways, like, people talk about wills or living trust or things like that? Are there other ways to prepare for that?
Well, Bill, the thing to look at when we look at their estates is they say, do we want to the court administer? Because you need to realize that the reason people have to go through the court process is because they die owning assets in their name, and the only way to get an asset out of the name deceased person and into the names of the living heirs is a court order. And so part of this discussion involves, do we want to and can we avoid the probate court? Because again, there are some formalities. It takes anywhere from 9 months to 2 years to go through probate. It's very expensive because you usually need an attorney to navigate that. And so right. One of the most preferred ways we've already talked about is a revocable living trust. Now, there are other ways that people can avoid probate, but usually it's on a specific asset. For instance, I'm in Ohio. I'm licensed to practice law in Ohio and Pennsylvania. And in Ohio, there's a thing called a transfer on death affidavit for your real estate, which means that you can actually say that when I pass away, I want my house, my real estate, to go to my spouse, or if it's jointly, usually you'd have a joint ownership there. My spouse pass away, go to the children equally. The same is with your car in Ohio. Now that's state specific. And again, for those listeners out there that's not sure about what transfer on death means, it's kind of like a life insurance policy where you name beneficiaries. And when you die, the insurance company is authorized to pay the proceeds of the life insurance to the beneficiaries, and there is no court involvement. Those assets are not controlled at all by the will, because again, remember, the only assets that are controlled by the will are those assets owned by a deceased person. So when you die, if you have these TODs, transfer on death, or for a bank, it's called payable on death. These transfers automatically happen when you die. And so technically, those assets are no longer owned by you. Upon your death, immediately, those assets now are owned by the beneficiaries, and the life insurance company, your retirement, the recorder of deeds, the motor vehicle department will automatically transfer these automobile titles, the real estate titles, the investment titles, the bank account. These will automatically be transferred as long as the beneficiaries apply for that transfer, and you don't need the court. So this is one of the ways people may not have a will, may not have a revocable living trust, but they do a little bit of estate planning by having these, maybe a bank account payable on death, or an investment account transfer on death, or if you're in a state that allows other things like automobiles and real estate, you can have these assets all automatically pass, just like a life insurance policy proceeds would pass. But then the complication, Bill and Ben, is that the other assets, like your personal property, you may have some jewelry, you may have cash, gold, you've got your furniture, your clothing, all these assets, those are going to, depending on their value, because a lot of times, for instance, my clothing, most of my clothing isn't going to be worth much to anybody. They take it down to the Goodwill. Usually it's a lot easier to sell it at a secondhand store. But again, if you've got jewelry that's worth something, there's just no way to be able to pass those outside the probate court process, because you die with those in your possession, and then you need a court order to get them out of your possession and into the names of the living heir. And the court will look at your will, or if you don't have a will, they'll give you one under the state
Well, I think we might have lost him again, Bill.
Yeah, I think we may have lost you, Val. I don't know, Val, if you can hear us, but yeah, there we go. I knew that was coming. Anyway, yeah, let me just emphasize while he's gone, because, obviously he knows a whole lot more about it than I do. I had a chance to actually attend one of his seminars. He does seminars for estate planning. Blew my mind. This was years ago. This was probably 20 years ago, I would guess. And that seminar was one of the most eye-opening things I'd ever heard on estate planning and planning for the end. So it was pretty incredible. And so anyway, sorry about that. But anyway, I was just telling everybody, Val, that Marilyn and I actually attended one of your seminars years ago on estate planning. And it was one of the most eye-opening things that I had heard to that point in my life. And that's saying something. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I was just blown away by the time you were finished with your presentation about estate planning, because of all what you were just describing, the probate and all the difficulties of trying to get your stuff, and you're dead, so you're dead and gone. So you don't have any say in it necessarily, but the courts do, and other people, third parties do. And so it's just so much better to be able to plan. So specifically, let's just delve into the specifics of estate planning, because, like we talked about, it's important to note that we do everything decently in order, and that we are preparing for that end of life situation. even for people in ministry, like Ben and me and others. And I'm sure there are other people who are watching and listening to who are in a different situation even than we are. But as far as estate planning, I mean, what exactly is that? How would you define that? Who are you, in doing estate planning? And what does that look like when you deal with people? I'm not getting any sound at all. Is your microphone on, Val? Can you hear him, Ben?
No, I cannot.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's unmuted. We can't hear you now. I'm so sorry. We don't normally have these problems. Yeah, I still can't hear you.
Yeah.
You may have to get off and then on again. Yeah. He's smart. See, I told you. He already knew. He was already doing that before I even told him. But once again, so we'll be talking momentarily with Val about estate planning, which is an important aspect of ministry as well, because we want to take care of our people. So our people being our family members, obviously. So, okay. All right, there we go. Go ahead. I don't know. Go ahead, Val. Can you hear me? I don't know. Are you? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Can you hear me, Val? Can you hear me okay? Are we connected now?
I can't hear you guys, but I can see Bill's mouth moving and the timer going.
That's funny because we can hear you.
Hear
Okay, just a second. Ben, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, just a second. Let me do some adjustments here. Okay. Okay. Can you still hear me? All right. Can you hear me, Val?
And now it's all kind of fuzzy and stuff now on your end, Bill.
Is it really? See, it may be, we may be having some issues with StreamYard too, because it shouldn't be doing that. Oh, we lost him again. Okay. Hey, third time's a charm, right? Not that we believe in superstition like that. We're Christians, so we know that God is sovereign, right? His providence. So, but hopefully we can get Val back, because I do believe, I feel passionately about this subject, because I've known too many people in ministry, Ben, that just don't, they struggle with this idea. They think that that it's a lack of faith it's a lack of faith to prepare for the end. So.
Yeah, I think that at the core of that kind of discussion, no, that's just anti-scripture.
I don't have any sound, but
at its core.
No, I can see you guys. I just can't hear any.
Oh, that is really interesting. I wonder what's going on. Let's see. Mute his mic. Unmute it. There we go. There we go. Okay, can you hear us now? Go. I'm going to mute yours too, Ben. There we go. Can you hear us now? I don't know what's going on here. This is really interesting. I don't know what's going on. I'm so sorry. We can hear you. So go ahead and talk. I don't know. That's interesting. Okay. Wonder what is going on here. This is really interesting. We don't normally have these issues. So I don't know. Let me look. Okay, well, there's mic volume. Oh, did we lose him? I think we lost him again. Oh boy. Well, anyway, Ben, what were you saying? You were saying it was anti-scriptural, which I agree.
Yeah, it's anti-scriptural. I mean, at the core of it, and I find that this is the case more times than not, is man, it's so much more simple when so like for example, Bill, you brought up Proverbs chapter 13. Proverbs, I mean, like those are 1 or 2 liners of pure wisdom. Right. And it's not just arbitrary wisdom. This is wisdom given from God to the man who asked it, Solomon, asked of it rather, and given to us so we might have instruction. And, you know, when it comes down time to, especially here in the Western evangelical America, man, I'm telling you what, like we have a very skewed version of what the Bible calls preparation for family, how we should act in the family, and how we should plan in the future for family. And I feel like that's kind of hit the nail on the head. This kind of stuff, I believe.
I can
this
see you
was
guys,
just kind
but
of.
I can't hear you. Sorry about that.
Oh boy, really? Yeah,
Oh,
we can hear you. We can hear you. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. This is very interesting. We've never had this before. We've never had this issue. I'm not sure exactly what is going on. I will check. Because I lost you last time. Let me check. Okay, automatically. Okay. Can you hear us? No, you still can't hear us. Okay. Yeah, this is really interesting. We've never had these issues before. Interesting. Okay. I mean, the only other thing I could think of is to reboot the whole thing, but then we would all have to get back in again, and I don't think that would work very well. But it's just a matter of communicating at this point in time. But anyway, estate planning is an important aspect of the whole process. And there he goes again. Is important, in that whole process. I believe actually, and I'm not trying to talk over you, Ben. I'm sorry. I kind of when you came back on, I kind of snatched it from you. But
no, you're okay.
To me, something like estate planning actually shows faith because it's assuming that God will give you something. He'll bless you in that way to be able to take care of your family. Because I mean, I guess I look at this whole subject from the same perspective as, say, having a job. We don't say to ourselves, hey, you know what? God will take care of me, so therefore I will not work, because that's not just counterproductive, but it's anti-biblical. And I believe this whole idea that we just need to depend on faith alone for it completely. I mean, it's almost a type of hyper Calvinism, of we don't have any responsibility. It's all about God and his sovereignty. And that's just simply not true.
Right.
We need to make sure that
we
are doing our part.
And not only that, it's an act of obedience, man. I mean, like whenever the Bible says something, we just need to do well to obey it. And, unfortunately, that seems critical. That may seem harsh, especially when we're talking about such an emotional topic, right? Like end of life. You know what? I'll just give you a personal anecdote for this whole thing. I've had 2 grandparents pass away in the last year. And I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for the planning ahead that they did, we would have been in a sad state of affairs for a very long time. There was still things, and I will say this too, as well organized as it was, man, like it's still time consuming, it's emotionally consuming and everything. And what better way to really, okay, so like let me frame up this conversation as well, that maybe this will make sense. You know, you live your whole life proclaiming the glory of God, preaching the gospel, living out the gospel in simple, basic biblical obedience and truth. And the end of your life comes around, and your family, they're going to be mourning you, and they're going to be missing you a ton, right? What better way to give them a sense of closure and security than making the end of your life process a little bit easier, to actually be able to process emotions and be able to value who you were in Jesus? And that, I think, is super essential, man. Like there is a component to that I don't think we think about very often. In the Bible, if you really look at it as a whole, is set up generationally, right? Like we see that, for example, the blessing of Aaron in Numbers, that's not just for the immediate Israelites that are wandering through the wilderness. That is for the generations to come. And then we see that in fruition ultimately in Christ. And you know, that is kind of a huge part of what we're talking about today, even though it's been a little choppy a little bit here and there. But at the core of it, I mean, and maybe we can, if it keeps on going like this, Bill, maybe we can figure something out. But man, I think as pastors as well, it's our opportunity, and it's our obligation, that when the Bible speaks about something that is a truth, fundamental truth of the scriptures, I mean, you can't avoid those kind of topics. And so with that being said, you know, I'm really kind of this is a topic that brings into light, you know, everything, especially if you're a dad or you have family members that are close to you, man. Like it's the security. Yeah. And so you know, that is a huge part of everything. But can you hear us now by chance?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Yes. Okay. I was actually
go.
getting my phone ready. We could hear you. We could hear you fine.
Yeah.
I was
Some
getting
good
my
stuff
phone
there,
ready
Ben.
just to call you, so you had audio, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to hear Ben, just me.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Okay. So estate planning. I mean, what does that look like?
I'm not sure where I got cut off, but when you look at the word estate, that's what you're planning. And your estate simply is everything you own when you die. And so you may not have a lot of assets, but if you have a retirement plan or life insurance, you should, you know, make sure that all of that is included in your estate when you're planning. And again, I think we said earlier, there's ways to make sure that your estate does not go through the probate court, because the probate court, there are several disadvantages of it. The first one is that it takes a while, anywhere from 9 months to 2 years is our prediction here in Ohio, and that holds well for most Midwestern states, Pennsylvania included. It's expensive. Anywhere from 5 to 10% of your estate could go for the expenses of probate. And then it's not private. You can go down to the courthouse under the Freedom of Information Act. You can get the identities of the people that are getting your money. And it's no surprise that many beneficiaries have reported that, you know, as soon as they got an inheritance, all of a sudden it seemed like everybody and their brother was coming out of the woodwork trying to sell them something. Well, you go down to the probate court, you can find out who got money recently and how to contact them, because usually their contact information is right there in the probate file. So people do want to avoid probate.
Yes.
And the best way, we indicated earlier, the most complete way is to have a revocable living trust, because as we said earlier, the probate court is going to handle all the assets that are in the name of a deceased person. Okay, that's the essence of the probate court. They change the title from a deceased person to the living heirs. Now, with a revocable living trust, what you do after you have signed the trust and it's existing, the next step is to transfer all of your assets, for instance, from Bill and Marilyn Brown to Bill and Marilyn Brown, trustees of the Brown Trust.
Yes.
Now, it's your responsibility to tell all those third-party financial institutions that hold your assets that you want that change to take place. So that, for instance, the bank has changed the assets, the bank accounts, all of them from Bill and Marilyn Brown to Bill and Marilyn Brown, trustees of the Brown Trust. Now, think about it. There's never going to be a time in the future when a deceased person owns that bank account, because Bill and Marilyn have already chosen someone to be the successor trustee to take over. Right. And so that successor trustee will automatically have legal title, and they'll do then with that legal title, because they're only the trustee, the manager, they're going to look at the trust, the Brown Trust, and Bill and Marilyn will have indicated in the trust who the beneficiaries are. So now the trustee will do the things that are necessary, final income tax return, any debts, and they make sure that when they've done all that, whatever's left now will be transferred by the trustee without a court order to Bill and Marilyn's beneficiaries, their children or whoever they want to be their beneficiaries. So again, these assets being in a revocable living trust are not actually in the name of the deceased people, the persons, because the Bill and Marilyn now are acting as their own trustees or managers for their entire life, and there's nobody else that are beneficiaries as long as as long as Bill and or Marilyn are alive. And that way, that's the way it avoids the probate court. Now, you fund the trust, you make sure that all the assets, the real estate, the car, all the financial assets are in the name of the trustee. And so those third-party institutions, when Bill and Marilyn's both go to be with the Lord, their successor trustee goes down to the bank and shows a death certificate and their ID showing that they are the trustee now that Bill and Marilyn are gone, and the bank will just give them the money. Now, here's where there's a disadvantage when you have a trust. The court will oversee and even post a bond for the fiduciary when they're handling the estate. Now, let's say Bill and Marilyn, if they have a will, they can dispense with that bond because they're telling the court, we trust this person, they won't steal our money. But that court oversight and that bond will make sure that if something is done that's not appropriate, illegal, and again, with the trust, you really have to understand that you can't use a revocable living trust unless you have people that you can trust to follow the law. And again, a lot of times if you have multiple children that are beneficiaries, they're going to check each other. If one of the children, the oldest child, is the successor trustee, well, the beneficiaries are going to actively be involved and make sure that trustee isn't doing anything that's inappropriate or illegal. So I've got over 1,500 trust clients, and I can tell you that I've never really had much of a problem with family members, doing things that are shady, not following the trust. Because again, even though they might be able to get away with something, again, generally you've got too much oversight by the family members, and if there is, it's theft.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so essentially a living trust is, number one, something for the living, right? The living passing on to another living relative who already has some kind of stake in that because of the living trust, passing that on. And the trust is just literally trust between parties. And
it is a legal document, an agreement, a contract. And the word living trust, it comes from the Latin inter vivos, and it's really meaning that you establish it while you're still living,
right?
Versus a testamentary trust that might come into existence when you are passed away to handle things like minor children. You know, again, this is one of the differences. You can handle your finances when you go to be with the Lord. You can leave a living trust for finances. But if you have minor children, you know, you can't designate a trustee to have custody of those children. That's a situation where you're still going to have to go through the court. But if the court is going to decide the issues of who is the guardian of the minor children, the trust can still dictate that the minor children's estate, their money, their inheritance that they got, will still be outside the court.
Okay.
So that's a fine point of the discussion.
Okay. So any property, regardless of the situation of the person, say in the case of a minor, the property remains separate legally for that person, even if they say have their situation change where maybe they go to a family outside of their own family or a situation like that. I mean,
Yes.
would it guard in that situation as well?
Yes. And again, you know, as an estate planning attorney, if I'm doing the estate plan using a revocable living trust, I'm going to make sure that there's a last will and testament that can be given to the court, and that's going to be designating the guardians of the minor children.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
usually there are two types of guardians: guardian of the person of the children, who decides where they live, where they go to school, who's going to be their doctor, these day-to-day custodial matters. That's the guardian of the person of the children. And then the guardian of the estate of the children is the finances of the children. And usually that's the same person when you pass away and have only a will. If you pass away and you have a revocable living trust and you have minor children, again, the guardian of the person of the children is going to be handled by the court. And that's why you also need a last will and testament if you have minor children. And then the trustee will be handling the estate of the minor children. And the court will have to acknowledge that. I mean, you can go into the court and you can argue anything you want. I mean, I actually started a nonprofit years ago because our ministry was, and I may have even had that ministry going when Bill, you and Marilyn attended our seminar. We talked about it's Minor Worth Shareholders Group, where we actually provide wills for families that had minor children. The Lord told me, he says, hey, you know, you're doing all these wills for these people, but what happens if they actually have a fight? You know, if they want to leave the children in the custody of a family in the church, and maybe the grandparents, who may be Christians, may not be Christians, get upset and say, no, we want the kids. And they go in there with a lot of money and try to fight that. Well, that was my nonprofit idea, to fund that, to be able to have people apply to our nonprofit for money to be able to fight that in probate court. Now, the Lord told me that I needed to do that ministry. I haven't had a problem yet where we've done it, but we haven't funded that ministry. I have the ministry. It's a Ohio nonprofit corporation, but we haven't applied to the federal government to get tax exempt status for donations and things like that. So we have never asked anybody for money, because it's not we haven't done our application, our 1023 yet. Mostly because I'm still having too much fun running our law firm, and my daughter, who's my paralegal, hasn't gone to law school, so she can take over the business so I can do the nonprofit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, just one quick note on that. It seems like a living trust is just a more ethical way of dealing with all of this anyway, because there are specifics that are stated, as opposed to, you know, throw a pointy stick in the middle of the room and good luck, everybody, you know, fight over it. There's actually, there's some safeguards that are there with a living trust to make sure that those arguments, I mean, arguments will be arguments. People argue over anything. It sounds like you haven't had that issue necessarily, but in an imperfect world that may come to bear, in a situation where, say, it's just a will and nothing else, there's a whole different dynamic there, it sounds like, than if you have a
Oh,
living trust where things are specifically stated.
well, again, Bill and Ben, most judges in most states are elected officials. And there's another word for them, politicians.
Yes.
And unfortunately, our politicians nowadays don't do anything unless they consider what it's going to do to their reelection chances. And again, I forgive me for being so skeptical about this, but what happens is if you are in a probate court situation, it's very easy to come into the court and complain. Even if it's a baseless complaint, we've seen situations where the judge won't make a decision. They'll just continue it on, keeps getting more and more expensive to continue the case. It's easier just to pay off the disgruntled family member that may have only a baseless case about that they're bringing, but the court will not even will entertain anything, but won't make a decision on it. So sometimes you see these family members being paid off because it's cheaper to get rid of them than to have a situation where you're continuing to fight the issue. So again, another good reason why people choose a revocable living trust, because it's a much harder to contest a living trust than a will. The court basically has a system on a protocol by which they invite everybody that wants to come in and air their grievances, and then don't make a decision. They'll continue it and expect the attorneys to do their thing to try to resolve the issue. And usually that's what the best way to do it is to pay them off, have the attorneys come to an agreement, pay them off, and then proceed. And it's a lot of times a lot less expensive. But with a revocable living trust, you can contest a trust, but it's not a ready-made forum. Whereas the probate court has the will, and they're inviting people in, and creditors, family members, they get notice. So there's a ready forum for them to walk into. You don't even have to have an attorney come in and complain. Whereas if you have a trust, you want to contest a trust, you have to be proactive. You have to get an attorney, and unless you're very talented yourself, and bring that into the court. And again, the court is not going to consider an issue at that point unless it actually has some merit. Attorneys can get into trouble by bringing a case into court, and they find it later it has no merit. They can be sanctioned. Their clients can be sanctioned, including money, punishment by fines. So again, another reason, if you have a reason that you might think that your estate will be contested, another good reason for having a revocable trust is it's very difficult to contest a revocable living trust or any trust. There are irrevocable trusts that maybe some other time we can get into talking about the difference between revocable and irrevocable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let's just let's get to the bottom line then. So who is this for? I mean, the question is always, is this for rich people? Or is this for people who, are say more modest means?
That's a good question.
Who would be the people that you would recommend for this?
There's a lot, probably about 10, 15 years ago, I authored an article called Living Trusts, Facts and Fiction. Yeah. And,
was that the one that you gave us?
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
It's on my website, but also what I'd say is people ask me, Val, do we have a living trust? And I say, well, I have over 1,500 trust clients. Do you really want to ask me? I mean, I'm going to think this is the best thing since sliced bread,
right?
But I say, but also don't trust an attorney that does nothing but probate and has never done a trust. They're going to tell you, they're going to be slanted the other way. They're going to say, oh, don't worry about probate. It's not bad in California, or it's not bad in New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania. It's not too bad. And I say, well, ask that attorney if you can prepay probate, like the funeral directors. And then they say, oh, well, wait a minute, we don't know how bad it's going to be. And I say, exactly. Who should make this decision? It shouldn't be attorneys. It shouldn't be an attorney that does a lot of trusts, and it shouldn't be an attorney that does a lot of probate. So I authored that article for individuals to be able to figure out whether they should have a trust or not. Now, again, here's a story, if we have time for it. When I practiced in Conneaut and we went to church together, there was a lady in the church. She was bent on having a revocable living trust. And it was like, somebody that, went out and wants to buy a BMW. And when a Chevy or a Yugo in those days were sufficient, you're going to spend 10 times the amount for a car when you don't need to. But in America, you're allowed to. You're allowed to buy a BMW as long as you can pay for it. And so I remember this lady was a widow lady, and she had 2 children, and she wanted a trust. And her estate was very meager. In those days, many houses were under $100,000, and she probably had another $100,000 in the bank. And I said, you know what? You're entitled to have a revocable living trust. But the one thing I don't want to have happen is when you go to be with the Lord, your kids come to me and say, Val, why did you let mom have a revocable living trust?
Right.
We could have gone through probate and it probably would have been the same amount of money that she spent. And I said, that's what I want to avoid. So I will do the revocable living trust as long as you bring the children in so they can ask questions now.
Good. Yeah. That's terrific. That's excellent. So, obviously, you being in estate planning, you are able to tell people that you're able to give them that advice, which, you're not necessarily selling a single product. You're trying to tailor this to people's needs and the situation they find themselves in.
Here's another problem here, Bill. Let me explain. People come in to see me and they want a will and the power of attorney and the healthcare documents and everything. And all of a sudden, we're in a discussion, and in the back of my mind, I say, I don't want to have a situation where the kids come to me and say, why did mom and dad go have you do a will? And incidentally, Ben and Bill, we make a lot more as a law firm through a probate. Of course, it's at the end, but probate is much more lucrative for an attorney than a living trust. Okay. Living trust is more expensive up front, but again, we make more money on the probate. So I try to make sure that people understand that and give them the opportunity when they come in for a will to understand that they could do a revocable living trust. But then here's the disservice. What happens if I've confused them and now they're saying, well, should we get a will or should we get a trust? And then they don't do anything and one of the people passes away. And then what have I done? I've done them a disservice. So what we usually do, and I suggest that most attorneys would probably do this, that do a revocable living trust. They say, we'll tell you what, let's do the will, the power of attorney, and the healthcare documents as a package. And if in the next 6 months you decide, we should have done a revocable living trust instead of the will, what we do is we give them all of their money that they paid us for the estate planning against the cost of a revocable living trust. And as I said, if they decide within 6 months of signing the wills and powers of attorney.
Wow. Yeah.
So this way they actually can be protected.
Yes.
And they still have that opportunity not to lose any money and switch over to a revocable living trust. Yeah. And that's happened. I mean, I actually, since the first of this year, we've had some folks do that, where they've come back and said, Val, we want to do the trust. The lady's husband, I actually went into the nursing home. The lady and her husband, we did wills and powers of attorney. They signed them in the nursing home. And then he passed away here, just went to the funeral about 3 weeks ago. And she's going to come in and she's doing a trust. We're giving all the money that they paid against the cost of the trust. So again, I think that if most attorneys that do trusts, they probably do that if they thought about it. And so again, I'm not licensed in California. I'm not licensed in New York. So you guys probably should identify some good estate planning attorneys where you guys are, so you can send your listeners, your viewers, back to them.
Yeah, definitely. But if our viewers, which we do actually have some viewers in Ohio, they're, of course, people that both you and I know, and Ben probably knows too. People from Conneaut who actually watch our live stream, which is kind of cool that we reconnect with people like that. But, obviously, if you're in Ohio or you're in Pennsylvania, because you said those are the two places that you're licensed, that they can give you a buzz, and you can help them out with that. But just in general, real quickly, and Ben, I apologize because I've been dominating this conversation
You're
with
okay.
Val.
You're all right.
It's been a while since, Val, you and I have really talked like this. But and I just find the subject so intriguing anyway. But my wife asks, how do you choose an estate planner? It just in general. I mean, obviously, state is important. They've got to be licensed in that state. But beyond that, how do you do that?
Well, I think that the art of crafting a trust is important. And so the document is important, but I think the experience, how has this attorney actually had clients pass away and had an experience of helping those people administer the trust after, for instance, the settlers, usually the clients are the settlers, they're the ones that establish the trust. When they pass away and the children or whoever the beneficiaries are have to navigate that situation, have they been able to have a fair amount? I would say a minimum maybe of 15, 20 clients have passed away. It doesn't mean that you can't take a chance on a younger attorney that's never seen anybody pass away. But again, that's one of the questions I would ask. Many states have certifications of estate planning attorneys. I never felt that was a worthwhile situation because, again, I don't do any litigation. I have attorneys that I refer litigation to. And again, I mean, I think that the questions that you are going to ask that attorney is, how long have you been practicing? I've been practicing over 30 years. But I think that I had a call actually today from a lady, a young attorney that I'm in a networking group with. And she called me because she's had a problem with a client where they're not understanding the difference between a will and a trust. And my agreement with her is she doesn't do probate. So any clients that she gets that she sends to me for probate, I will make sure that I send them back to her to do a trust.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, she's only been practicing for about 5 years, but I've spent time with her and she's very bright. And I trust that, she knows what she's doing. And so, especially people in her age bracket, I don't think she's even 30 years old. So a lot of folks that are, coming out of college looking for an estate planner that's going to be around for the next 40, 50 years, she's going to be the one that I'm going to, send everybody to that, comes to me through probate as a referral from her.
Yeah, terrific. Ben, did you have any questions? We're hitting the hour mark, and Val, I know you need to get going. So, Ben, did you have?
No, I was just soaking it all in, man.
Yeah.
This is really uncharted territory for my life, so I was just sitting back and listening. But no, like, again, going back to that first initial thing that you and I talked about, Bill, about Proverbs 13, man, it's just an act of obedience to plan and leave something for your kids, but not only your kids, but your kids' kids, and just being responsible with what God has given you, and as well as there is blessing in following what God has told you to do. So, there is that as well. But I really don't have anything, because this is honestly, this is a very info-packed episode that we had, man. Like that's a lot. This is cool. But it is an enlightening thing, for I think a lot of people, and to maybe bring this back to pastors in general, because we as pastors are teaching on finances, we're teaching on how to live a God glorifying life, and leading them in the right direction of, of course, pastors aren't going to be estate attorneys, so knowing where to send people or how to start that conversation with people, because unfortunately, Bill, we do have the ministry of seeing people born and people passing away. So this is something that we see on a regular occurrence. I mean, especially in the last couple of years, this is a reality. So, but no, I really appreciate your time, Mr. Holz. I appreciate you being able to talk about this, which is a huge thing. And, I just this has been kind of cool to sit back and just kind of listen.
Yeah.
I think this is my quietest episode, Bill.
I think so. Yeah. Val, did you want to say anything as we're closing this out?
No, thank you guys for having me on. It was fun, and we should do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me go ahead and pray us on out, and we'll close this up. Our Father, we thank you that we had this wonderful time with our brother, Val Holz, and we just thank you that you've given to us estates, you've given to us things, you've given to us money to be able to live our lives, you've given to us wonderful families that we can share that with, that we can take care of them, whether in life or in death. Father, you have given us so much, and we just thank you that you've made us stewards of that, and we are honored, but we're also taken aback by it, knowing that you've given us so much, and we just pray that, Father, you just work through your Holy Spirit to remind us constantly that we do need to be good stewards of what you've given us, and may you be honored and glorified. We pray all these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you next week. We actually have a couple special guests next week. We'll have Pastor Preston on with us, as well as Derek Brown. So we'll be looking forward to that. Yeah, two familiars. And and we'll be talking about special needs children in ministry. So it should be a good one. So, and once again, Val, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, take care, guys.
Alrighty.